Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel for another dose of spine-chilling Reddit horror stories. Today, we've got some truly unsettling tales that will send shivers down your spine. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 10,000 subscribers by the end of April, and your support means everything to us. Every subscription helps us keep bringing you more terrifying and thrilling content. Now, let's dive into these disturbing Reddit stories that are guaranteed to keep you hooked. Every night, my girlfriend wakes me up to tell the exact same joke. Before I start, I feel like I should let something very clear. I absolutely love Ellen. We've been living together for about 3 years now, but have known each other our whole lives. In fact, we were childhood friends. And I know this may sound like a fairy tale to some people, but it truly felt like we were always destined to be together. Even after graduation, when we started dating other people, it only felt truly right when we were with each other. So I don't know what took me so long to ask her out, but I'm really glad I did. We have the same taste in music, movies, and even food. We laugh at the same dumb jokes and know exactly how to comfort each other in times of need. She's the kindest, most gentle, and loving girl I ever met. We even been talking about our plans for marriage and how we would like to have kids of our own. That's why it hurts so much how it all went terribly wrong in just 4 nights. I would also like to preface that Ellen doesn't have much of a family other than me, and some very distant aunts that she never met and doesn't even know their names. I was born in a big family with 4 siblings and plenty of cousins that were always visiting and even helping out when we got in trouble. Ellen has none of that. She doesn't have any siblings, and her father was an alcoholic, abusive freak that died when she was young. Her mother was a very kind and inspiring person that took care of the family by herself for many years, and almost a second mother to myself. So when she passed away last year, it hurt us both for a long time. But Ellen stayed strong. She's not the type to let her feelings easily surface, so you gotta be a lot more perceptive to get what she truly feels. I used to pride myself in being capable of that. I felt like I knew her better than I knew myself. That's why this is all so strange, and frankly, terrifying. We were sleeping in bed and I was dreaming. I don't really remember what it was about, but for some reason I'm sure of it, until I heard her voice very close to my ear. Knock, 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 knock. She was caressing my hair gently while sitting in bed and looking below at me. I slowly opened my eyes, groggy from sleep. Hey, what is it, baby? She kept looking at me, fixated, and repeated, knock, 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 knock. I glanced at the digital clock on top of the dresser. 3:27 a.m. I had work in only a few hours. What is it, Ellen? She paused. Please answer the joke, dear. Knock, 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 knock. Fine. I accepted mostly because I was expecting some kind of surprise. Ellen wasn't the type to do what she was doing for no reason. Who's there? Her smile opened up and she answered, Not me. So don't answer the door. I kept looking at her, dumbfounded. What was that supposed to mean? Is that it? Is that the joke? Yes, she said, laying in the couch and covering herself with a blanket. Thank you for answering. Weirdo, I answered, closing my eyes and going back to sleep. Next morning, things went as usual. I only remembered the strange conversation while I was alone in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, and wasn't even sure if it had truly happened or if it was just a weird dream. So we had our breakfast together, and she was acting normal, reading something aloud from a fashion magazine. Frankly, I wasn't paying much attention. So I took the opportunity to ask about last night. Initially, she didn't seem to know what I was talking about. Then her eyes fixated on me, and the same smile from last night crossed her face, briefly. And I knew it wasn't just a dream. She told me it wasn't anything of importance, and stopped paying attention when I asked more inquisitively. And even though I shouldn't, I gave up. I had work and other matters to attend to, and just brushed off the weird event, thinking it wouldn't happen again. But the following night, I woke up to her voice. Knock, knock. A pause. Knock. What is it now? I said. Ellen, what are you doing? Knock, 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 she repeated. This time, she wasn't even touching me, just sitting in bed looking at me with that same smile. But her eyes seemed larger, and she blinked in longer intervals. I looked at the clock. Once again, 3:27 a.m. Ellen, come on, what is it? I got work in a few hours? can't have the luxury of waking up in the middle of the night to answer knock-knock jokes. Knock, knock, knock. This is getting creepy, you know? I'm not sure if this is some gag you've been doing, but I don't like it. Answer it. Knock, knock, knock. I sighed, but also let a small laugh escape. It was creepy, of course, but she was also my Ellen, so it didn't bother me as much as it should. Fine, who the F is there? I answered in a playful tone. Not me, so don't answer the door. For some reason, I felt a chill down in my spine. It was the same answer as before, and I still didn't get what it meant. But the way she said it, with a strange, monotone voice, contrasted well with her smile and the fact that I had no idea of what she meant by that. What does that mean? I asked. I really don't get it. She just smiled and went back to sleep. I felt a throb in my heart, but did the same. Next day, we talked again about what was happening. She was very evasive with my questions, and I barely got her to say anything. It was almost as if she couldn't talk about it, which was very strange, considering we talk about pretty much everything. I told her I needed to be well rested for work, something she should understand well, and wasn't liking her little gag every night. She just nodded, and I decided to not press further as I didn't want to hurt her feelings and had work to attend to. When I got back home, we had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. Knock, knock. I opened my eyes faster this time around. In fact, I barely got any sleep. I just knew she would do it again, and kept thinking about it the whole time. Glanced at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Knock, knock. I thought about ignoring her, just pretending I was asleep and she wouldn't wake me up. So I closed my eyes slowly, hoping that she hadn't seen me opening them in the first place, and stayed quiet. Knock, knock, she continued. She didn't stop. I regulated my breathing, but she kept going. Knock, knock. I'm not answering your effing joke, Ellen. Stop it. Knock, knock, I ignored, but she kept going. She had never been this insistent with anything before. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting on my nerves, and frankly, I felt scared. Why was Ellen doing this? Why every night, at the same exact time down to the minute? Why wouldn't she let me sleep until I answered her? Knock, knock. I got up in a sudden movement. God damn it, Ellen. I was ready for a discussion, but when I finally glanced at her, it was as if the strength was drained from me. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't blinking, just staring right at me, fixated like an animal. And her mouth was moving slowly, and she didn't stop. Knock, knock. I didn't know how to react or what expression I had when I saw her, but my heart skipped a beat. It was terrifying, as if her gaze froze me in place. 1,000-yard stare. Knock, knock. Who's there? I asked, feeling as if it was the only way out of that nightmare. Not me, so don't answer the door, she said weakly. Ellen slowly closed her eyes and laid down. I kept staring at her while she fell into what seemed to be a deep sleep. I got up and left. I walked downstairs and sat down at the couch in the living room, staring at the night sky outside and absorbing the quiet of the neighborhood. My heart was beating fast and it didn't slow down. I was too scared to sleep in the same room as my girlfriend, all because of a effing knock-knock joke. But it was unnatural. I thought about calling someone. I thought about it all being some kind of sleep-related issue, such as some type of sleepwalking. But it didn't make any sense. I felt so tired and decided that early in the morning, I would call an old friend who's a psychologist and get the opinion of a professional. Something was wrong with Ellen. I stayed in the couch as the day rose, and once Ellen woke up, she was acting normal again. Even asked me why I wasn't in bed. I didn't answer. In fact, I didn't speak to her and simply left for work. She seemed very upset, but I wouldn't do anything about it. Once I got to work, I called my friend, told him everything that was happening in as much detail as I'm describing now. He didn't seem as worried as I figured, but we agreed in making an appointment for next week. Now I just needed to convince Ellen to come with me. I received plenty of text messages from her. She seemed very worried, sad, and even confused. She apologized a lot, and it broke my heart a little. I felt bad. I shouldn't have, but I answered her and made her promise it wouldn't happen again. I also told her about the appointment, and she seemed reluctant, but agreed to go with me, so we made up. This was Ellen, after all. The girl I knew ever since I was 6 years old. The woman I loved and that had taken care of me for years. and as much as that strange behavior creeped me out, she wasn't doing anything particularly frightening or even dangerous. So for a brief while, I convinced myself I should give her another chance. When I returned home from work, we stayed together. She even prepared my favorite meal. Ellen was acting as gentle and caring as I always remembered, and I slept with her in our bedroom, even though I was still a bit reluctant. Knock! I couldn't believe it. She promised me she wouldn't. Knock! I gazed at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Always. Knock. I was laying on my stomach and I couldn't see her face. In fact, I didn't even bother to look at her. I was feeling more sad than scared at that point. Sad that she had broken her word. Knock. Who's there? I answered, determined to just go back to sleep. Not me, so don't answer the door. I stayed quiet and closed my eyes. I just hoped I would be able to handle it until the appointment next week. To my surprise, I was actually able to sleep. Probably because I hadn't been able to rest since last night. The following morning, I went back to not saying anything to Ellen, only very limited responses. I was expecting her to act same as yesterday, trying to apologize, but she didn't. Mostly she didn't say anything, almost as if she had accepted it. She also looked tired, or at least a bit weak. I went to work, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Didn't receive any messages either. Once I got back, we had the most silent dinner I ever had in my life. And she barely ate anything. I decided to let her have the bedroom and sleep on the couch. I wasn't sure if it would stop her, but held on to the hope that she wouldn't go downstairs only to tell me the same knock-knock joke again. I covered myself with a blanket, shaked off that uneasy feeling, and tried to sleep. I had a deep sleep, without dreams. Felt like I was lost in darkness. Then I heard breathing. Opened my eyes to see Ellen standing above me, looking at me with big, fixated eyes and dilated pupils that didn't seem to belong in such a completely neutral expression. Watching me sleep, I almost screamed in terror. Jumped out of the couch, and her eyes followed me as I stumbled through the dark room, creating distance between us. For a moment, I was able to glance at the clock above the table. 3:27 a.m. Ellen, what are you doing? I asked, desperate. But she didn't move. In fact, she didn't say anything. Just stared at me, as if I was made of glass, and she could see right through me. Then I heard a knock on the front door. Instinctively, I looked in that direction. It was followed by another knock and another. Someone almost pounding at the door. I glanced back at Ellen, and she was still staring at me. Slowly, I got closer to the door, and she didn't move. The pounding continued. Who's there? I screamed. It stopped. And then I heard a voice. John! John, can you hear me? Open the door, please! John, please open the door! I froze in place. The voice kept calling me, but I couldn't believe it. It was Ellen's voice, coming from the other side of the door, but it couldn't be. I beg you, John. Open the door, it's serious. She's not me, I swear, she's not me. Slowly, I turned my head to look at Ellen, standing in front of the couch. She was looking at me, the same fixated eyes and a terrible wide grin across her face. The pounding continued. John, open the door. Please, you have to trust me. I stayed still, not knowing what to do, and I don't remember what happened after that. I just woke up in my bedroom. The digital clock indicates it's 4:21 a.m. Ellen isn't by my side. I'm completely alone. I'm trembling uncontrollably, and I don't know what's going on. I don't remember what happened after I saw her terrible grin. I don't know if I opened the door. I tried to look for my phone, see if I could call the police, or at least someone that I know. But I left it downstairs. All I have is Ellen's laptop, and it's where I'm writing this right now, to get advice. Because I can't go downstairs. The corridor's dark, very dark, almost as if the shadows were leaning into the room. And I can hear a faint scratching sound coming from below. What should I do? Something has been walking my street at night. It's 3:36 a.m. I am writing this, not as a cry for help, for I fear that it is too late for me, but as a warning for all of you. My name is John Waters. Recently, I had a change in place of work that required me to commute an hour and a half one way. At first, I didn't mind the drive, but then over the course of the next few months, it began to be something that I found myself dreading. This being the case, I kept my eyes open for any houses or apartments that I could afford in the area. That's when I stumbled upon a very nice house that happened to be in the local mill village. I was hesitant at first, but the price was unheard of. I booked an appointment with the realtor, and a few days later I met with her at the house. I made sure to arrive a little early so I could explore the exterior of the property unsupervised. The house was beautiful, and so was the rest of the neighborhood. All of the houses were well kept, much unlike most other mill villages that typically fell apart once their mill had shut down. I walked around the house admiring the yard and all the plants along with it. The siding had a new coat of paint, and the yard appeared to have been recently landscaped. This house was clearly worth more than they were asking. I knew there had to be a catch, and that this was too good to be true. As I walked back around to the front of the house, I noticed one of the homeowners next door out watering in his yard. He was turned toward me with a blank look on his face. Realizing that this could be my neighbor soon, I decided to be friendly and waved at him with a smile. He hesitantly held up his hand to wave and gave me a half smile in return. There was an odd look in his eyes that gave me some discomfort. I noticed that he wasn't actually watering anything. The hose pointed straight up, and the steady steam of water poured onto his concrete driveway. I frowned at the sight of this, but my attention was taken away by the sound of tires on the pavement as the realtor pulled in. The realtor gave me the grand tour, talking up every amenity that would be included in the sale. I have to give her credit, though. She was very good at what she did. I was in awe at every room. When the tour was over, we sat down on the perfectly staged couch in the living room and negotiated the price. I got right to it and asked her what the catch was for the price being so low in such a nice neighborhood. Her eyes slightly opened wider, but she immediately regained her composure. She stumbled over her words when she told me that most people give mill villages a negative connotation, and that makes them hard to sell. I slowly nodded and found myself considering the possibility of being stuck at that house with no resale value. I think she noticed my hesitation because she was overly quick to tell me that if I signed the papers today, she could knock off an additional $5,000. I should have questioned it. I should have thought it through. I should have weighed all my options. Yet it was such a good deal that I knew I couldn't pass up. I signed the papers without any further questions. After the closing process, I started early in the morning and got all of my things moved in and made the place look like home by the end of the day. I ate some pizza, had a few beers, and went out to the front porch to watch the sunset. I looked around and saw people working in their gardens and kids playing in the yards. It was all so nice. I noticed the door of the house across the street opened up to reveal an older lady with a pie in her hands. She waved at me with a huge smile as she crossed the street into my yard. I greeted her and told her my name. Hers was Anne. I received the pie from her as a welcome to the neighborhood, and we both sat down on my front porch and got to know each other. She was cheerful and, frankly, just a happy person. The smile that she wore seemed to never leave her face. Then the sun went down. Anne looked up at the now darkened sky and immediately shot up from her chair. I thought it odd and asked if everything was all right. All she told me was that she had to go clean her house. At this time of night, and the way she moved so quickly, caused me to believe otherwise. As I watched her descend the porch steps, I noticed that she wasn't the only one going inside. People stopped gardening and kids stopped playing. Everyone was heading inside their homes. Anne stopped halfway across the street to turn back to me. She told me that no matter what, never open my door after midnight. I started to respond, but before I could, she had already made her way across the street and into her house. She slammed her front door, and just like that, I was there, only one remaining outside. I briefly stood there, dumbfounded, before I headed inside and locked the doors. I had no idea what to make of all this. And to be completely honest, it was freaking me out. I told myself that I was just imagining things, and that Anne was probably just a little off in the head. I knew I needed to get my mind off of it all, so I took some sleeping pills and watched some TV on the couch until I dozed off. At 1:38 a.m., I woke up to scratching on the front door. I quickly sat up on the couch as I heard it once more. My stomach sank to depths of which I had never felt before. My mind was racing back to all that had happened the day before. I crept over to the front window and did my best to discreetly peer through the blinds at the door. Nothing but the soft glow of the streetlights. Then I heard the scratching coming from the back door. I felt like I was going to throw up, but held it back in an attempt to not make a single noise. The scratching had ceased, but I still crouched on the living room floor for what seemed like hours to make sure the coast was clear. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. The next few weeks went by a lot more smoothly. After not hearing any more noises in the night, I chalked it up to just being some raccoons looking for a free meal. It was so convenient only being 10 minutes away from work and made my life a hell of a lot less stressful. I made new friends in the area and had more free time to go out and have fun. Everything was great until last night. I had been out late at a friend's house and didn't start heading home until about 1 a.m. I neglected to watch the time, and truthfully, it didn't bother me anymore. When I turned the corner to my street, it was as dead as usual. I noticed that as I pulled into my driveway, the neighbors were poking their heads through their curtains, watching my every move. I looked down at my phone and pulled up messages to text my friend, letting him know I made it safely home. When I looked up, it was in my headlights, staring at me through the windshield. Words cannot describe the horror that I felt from what stood there in front of my car. It looked like a man, yet slightly more elongated. Its shoulders were hunched forward, leading down to fingers twice as long as anything human. Sharp, pointed claws grew out from its fingertips, and it repeatedly extended and retracted them as though it were some kind of tick. Its skin was a pale gray that looked as though rubber were stretched over its bones. Its eyes were solid black, where normally there would be white, with tiny, bright yellow pupils in the center. It took a step forward, stretching its long and bony legs, claws digging into the ground. I panicked and threw my car into drive and floored the gas. I must have hit the creature with a good amount of force because it flew back a few feet before landing on the grass and taking off into the woods. The neighbor next to me, the one with the hose, opened his door and rushed to my car. He grabbed me and we both sprinted into my house and slammed the door behind us, locking it up tight. I sank down to the floor with my back against the wall, attempting to catch my breath. My neighbor held out his hand to shake mine and said his name was Frank. I asked him what the F that thing was. He said that no one knows, but real late at night that thing walks the streets, looking for any living thing that still remained outside. For reasons unknown, it has never broken into anyone's house. So it has become common knowledge around here to shut and lock your door every single night after sundown. When the first sightings started happening, the people of the Mill Village gathered together and decided that getting the police involved would be useless and only cause more problems. No one had been killed so far, but there was no doubt that the creature had sinister intentions for the townsfolk. Frank even said that pets would go missing here and there, most of them never to be seen again. The ones that did come back, though, never acted the same afterwards. I asked him why he was staring at me the day that I came to look at the house, and he said that he was just shocked to see someone new move in. Apparently, no one new had moved into the Mill Village in over 20 years. Frank and I talked until the sun came up this morning. It was comforting having someone else around to experience all of this with. I didn't go into work today. I didn't even call in. I was paranoid and in shock from the horror I had witnessed last night. I sat on the couch in front of the TV all day long, unable to think of anything else. How could these people just accept that thing being out there, stalking the streets at night? The sun began to go down, so I grabbed the baseball bat that I kept by the front door for defense. I sat on the floor facing the front door, not taking my eyes off of it for a single second. Around 12:30 a.m., I heard the awful sound of a man screaming coming from outside. I shuddered at the thought of some poor bastard out there, possibly getting eaten alive by that thing. Around 1 a.m., my eyelids became rather heavy due to lack of sleep from the night before. I tried to keep my focus on the front door, but it was no use. I fell asleep. There were 3 knocks at the door. I opened my eyes and laid there, hoping it was part of a dream that I was having. 3 more knocks at the door. At this point, my heart was racing. I pulled out my phone to look at the time. 3:20 a.m. I crawled over to the front window, peered out, and let out a huge sigh of relief. It was Frank. I opened the door, grabbed him by the shoulders to pull him inside, and locked the door once again. I asked him what the hell he was doing out there and was alarmed when I did not receive an answer. I examined him up and down and noticed that he looked a bit pale. I began to ask if he was okay, but was interrupted by a loud crunching noise. It was coming from Frank. I watched in absolute horror as his fingertips burst apart, making way for even longer, gray fingertips. The skin on his arms and legs stretched to the point that it started tearing in a patternless and blood-filled manner. His face stretched apart and tore in places that revealed eyes as black as death itself. Before the thing could finish bursting from its shell that was once Frank, I was able to run with all the sanity I had left into my bedroom. I hid in my closet and barricaded the doors shut from the inside. It is now 3:36 a.m. I can hear it crashing throughout my house. It's getting closer. I am writing this not as a cry for help, for I fear that it is too late for me, but as a warning for all of you. Stay inside at night, lock the doors, and most importantly, don't open your door for anyone after midnight.